See, that's right. Yeah.
Been a long journey.
She did her journey. Yes.
That's where the funds are.
It was 2 years after she started. I could have had it easier. Worked less and made more money. That's right.
But you made a bigger impact.
We certainly did. Yeah. Thank you. It's been hard.
It's 6 o'clock. Dunbar from the order.
Yeah. That's good.
Lance, you call the roll.
You're up first.
Scott Henson, zoning board.
We call the roll.
Please call the roll.
Okay, can't we just introduce ourselves and who we are?
Go ahead.
Here.
Here.
Can we now introduce ourselves? Because nobody else heard our names but us. So can we now introduce ourselves since nobody else heard our names?
Here. Here. Mr. Babcock. Here.
Consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda or the minutes from last week? I'll entertain a motion to approve both.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as well as the zoning board meeting minutes from March 26th.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand.
I can't vote.
4-0, passes. Okay, item 4, line along. I'd like to introduce Andrew Blue, who is going to start the presentation on the Unified Development Board's support group ad hoc.
Okay, thank you, and we really appreciate being here. It's been a long 9 months of lots of meetings each month. Dick has been part of them. So just want to give, just so everyone who has the final report, we're going to follow the final report section by section with myself presenting and Jason Webster also presenting. But I'll take a few of the initial areas and just to give you some background on kind of how I got involved, is I kept hearing about land development, obviously over a year ago, and wanted to learn more information and get educated as to what everyone was talking about, because I kept hearing about these large-scale apartment complexes, and that didn't appeal to me as a Summerfield resident. So once I started digging a little deeper, based on what I was hearing, it felt like I was just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And so I got much more educated on our comp plan, which is a great comp plan, the UDO as written, the draft that we went over, and water science and other areas of schools. And I would recommend that anyone, and that was one of the great things that came about because of what happened a year ago, is I think a lot more people started to get educated. And I think there's a lot more we can do as a community to educate those. And our committee was one of the great ways to get a lot more. So, so I applied and was chosen to be on the committee, and we have a bunch of the committee members here. So this report concludes the work of the UDO committee over the past 9 months. I want to read exactly what the committee's purpose was. The purpose of the committee is to engage representative community stakeholders in a review of the current UDO draft's substantive issues with the goal of shaping a final UDO draft that is more congruent with the current comprehensive plan. The community is advisory, and I stress advisory, to the zoning board. The desire is to engage the community in the rewrite process to an even greater degree beyond what is normally required in the adoption of a development ordinance. So we are advisory to you, and now is our opportunity to make those recommendations. So let me point out a few of the details on what I just read. Advisory. We are only advisory to the zoning board. So it'll be up to them to take the next steps. They'll take what we have recommended, make their own changes, and hold public hearings. So transparency, public hearings will be a part of this going forward. Every step of our process was transparent. We had a Dropbox where everyone could see our files. The final report includes all of the input from everyone on the committee. We had open meetings that were taped and shared, or I don't know if it's taped as I'm showing my age by saying taped. And then, so all the future policy changes should be transparent as well. So our recommendations cannot be twisted. I want to reiterate that we do not have the authority to change anything in the UDO. It is up to the zoning board and the town council to make any changes. So the community stakeholders. There were many different personalities and cross-sections of the citizens of our community, but all had a common theme. We want to see Summerfield grow in a way that maintains our rural character, protects our water supply, and maintains quality schools among many of the other policy areas outlined in the comprehensive plan. We came together and worked through these tough issues for 9 months of hard work, and I recommend that our committee efforts be used by the Summerfield leadership as a template or example on how to work together. Copying this process could bring our fractured town back together. So I do want to recognize those committee members who participated. Some of them are here, some of them are not. The ones who are here, when I call your name, if you could raise your hand so we can give you kudos. But Amber Best, myself, Churchill Brown, Gary Brown, Mildred Hoffler Fouché, Bob Jones, Beth Kaplan, Jeff Lividay, Ryan Oates, Deborah Kroll-Moser, Priscilla Olenek, Jason Webster, and we just had Amber join us. Amber, I called your name earlier. And then we had some non-voting members, and we had Dick. We had John O'Day, who was a town council liaison, and Dick was our zoning board liaison. We had Mike Adams, who was a town council liaison. We had Todd Rotruck, who was a town council liaison. We had great facilitators in Jesse Day and Bill McNeil, and then the support staff of Carrie Spencer, who did an inordinate amount of work also, and Scott Whitaker. So we appreciate everyone coming together for this common goal. We considered the comprehensive plan, so I'm going into the process now, but we considered the comprehensive plan as a vision for what the citizens saw as the future for Summerfield as a town with distinctly rural character. The citizen-created comp plan is a really good document and included deep insight on how Summerfield should moderate our growth. Our work focused on the UDO draft dated January 23rd, 2016. We reviewed the comprehensive plan policies and compared them to the UDO details. We have highlighted where there are misalignment or where we think the draft UDO regulations would not carry out the intent of the comprehensive plan policies. One area of concern was that the UDO was not a finished draft. Incorrect table references, data, making it difficult to review. So that was kind of an overarching theme. We also did not review either the current development ordinance, previous drafts of the UDO, or proposed amendments. The committee moved through the comprehensive plan policy by policy, examining how the provisions in the UDO would implement each comprehensive plan policy. Between meetings, committee members submitted homework. That homework did not take a small amount of time. It took a good amount of time. I was averaging about 2 to 4 hours on a bi-weekly basis, and I think the committee members, you can talk to them also. With observations, comments, questions, and suggestions for improving the UDO provisions that related to the comp plan. You're going to see me reference the comp plan over and over and over. The planning director, Carrie, consolidated members' comments into draft recommendations, which the committee reviewed, discussed, and provisionally adopted during subsequent meetings. We then re-reviewed the complete collection of recommendations for inclusion in this report. All of the details are included in this report, line item by line item. I need to point out again that we had a very diverse group of citizens on the committee with differing points of view. It is also very important for you to note that all of the votes for the policy area recommendations, other recommendations, and final report were unanimous without any dissenting votes. I am proud to be part of this team. So the overarching themes and concerns. There are a few overarching items that I want to point out before Jason goes into each policy area. So rural character.
Let me explain, these are things that crossed over all the policies. We were going policy by policy, but a lot of things kept coming up as applying to more than one policy. Therefore, overarching.
So rural character. We all shared the comprehensive plan's commitment to keeping Summerfield rural nature in place, protecting its traditional small-town character, and preserving its open spaces. The UDO must ensure that new developments meet high standards and protect essential resources, especially water availability and quality open space. We were well aware that Summerfield is highly attractive to future development due to our landscape, good schools, proximity to jobs, and local amenities. The growth pressures will continue to increase with major thoroughfares opening and being expanded. The UDO written properly will help the town leaders balance the impacts of growth and protect the town's rural quality of life. Density. We also recognize the town policy currently provides for new residential development to average no more than 0.73 units per acre or 60,000 square feet per lot. But we found how this limits opportunities for empty nesters, older residents, and younger millennial families to find homes in Summerfield, and it limits the areas that are written in the comprehensive plan. The common objective statement for appropriate housing and residential development, policy area 6, and 3 policies specifically aim to address these needs. I'm going to go through these 3 policies. 6.1 states that while residential development in Somerville should remain mostly low density, single-family detached housing, other housing forms such as small attached and accessory housing should also be fostered to meet a variety of housing needs. Policy 6.2 calls for a variety of housing types and sizes to be provided generally in large developments. 6.7 indicates that the town should allow for some land development for moderately priced housing. The density issue was discussed extensively, and we all agreed that the UDO needs to allow for smaller homes on smaller lots in appropriately zoned locations while protecting open space and areas for groundwater recharge. I want to stress that this is only in appropriately zoned locations. The comp plan thought about how to address this with policy area 6 containing multiple examples of strategies for encouraging a variety of housing types with incentives for building homes at a range of price points. These strategies should be carefully considered with the aim of providing flexibility in zoning that maintains rural character and overall low density. Also, a land use plan could identify some of the town's land area for moderate density housing in appropriate locations to meet the intent of the comprehensive plan. This will be discussed later. The committee recommends changes to the UDO to provide some flexibility for the private sector to meet emerging needs for current residents in the next generation. So management of water and land resources. Early on in our process, we were told the town was working with other towns on a regional water feasibility study that would be available earlier in 2018. We postponed reviewing policy area 5 until that was going to be available. And that's the policy that addresses water supply and sewage treatment options. And for this reason, we thought we'd have additional data and analysis. Unfortunately, we did not have the results, and they're still not available at this time. We also discussed the 1998 USGS study of groundwater for all of Guilford County as the basis for density limit in the town's current zoning ordinance and the draft UDO. This study has been challenged due to missing assumptions about groundwater recharge from septic systems. So our recommendation is to use the current water feasibility study, particularly the groundwater portion, as a guide for any potential changes to the town policy and UDO rewrite. We also think the UDO should require all large-scale development proposals be based on current available hydrology and soil science, and incorporate best practices for managing wastewater and protecting groundwater. With site-specific studies, densities greater than permitted under current policy could be allowed in certain zoning districts using the most up-to-date technology. So the next one was plan-based zoning district recommendations. We all recognize that Summerfield needs more innovative zoning and planning strategies to fulfill the vision of the comprehensive plan and manage impending growth wisely. We are all well aware of the controversy surrounding a proposal for PD zoning that was considered in 2016. The committee did not rehash that proposal, but concentrated its attention on the draft UDO. We found the draft UDO Planned Area Development District extremely vague, general, and ambiguous. We also noted further that the UDO draft did not have the OSRD type open space residential district as recommended by the comprehensive plan. The vision of the comp plan cannot be carried out solely by the conventional zoning districts in the draft UDO. Comprehensive plan policies such as those calling for mixed-use development in 6.10, a variety of housing types in 6.2, and some land development for moderately priced housing, 6.7, were not well supported by the draft UDO districts. We considered the value of having a zoning district in the UDO to meet these and other policies, with a carefully designed mix of uses in a development plan to preserve open space and other town values. No other zoning district is seen to allow for the flexibility in site design that the PD type district can offer through its master planned approach to development. We recommend also retaining an OSRD type district governed by a regulating plan presented with a rezoning request. This would allow development to offer a range of housing types and sizes and protect significant open space. A residential OSRD type district would allow flexibility in lot sizes and density based on site-specific hydrological studies and best practices for wastewater management. A mixed-use OSRD type district would offer the same flexibility in residential area uses, allow an appropriate mix of non-residential uses, and still protect significant open spaces. The committee recommends that any PD type district be regulated as a base district with all developments details specified in a regulating plan submitted with a zoning request. A land use plan could help define areas appropriate for this type zoning. Once again, more on that later. Any PD type district for Summerfield will need a major overhaul and more definition. This is in alignment with the comp plan and the public comments. The UDO could allow for a mixed-use district with definitive regulations concerning minimum and maximum overall acreage, maximum density, intensity of uses, prohibitive uses, height and dimensional standards, open space, and public involvement in approvals. This type district should be applied only in appropriate areas of the town, primarily along development corridors where soil and water recharge conditions are conducive. Much more public engagement will be needed for any modified district to allay the fears and concerns of Summerfield citizens. I know this is where some might mince our words, but I am confident that the committee listened to the citizens to address their concerns that were expressed last year. We recommend much more detailed zoning districts with upfront planning. And then the last area I want to talk about that was an overarching was the plan for growth. We all believe that the town must have a carefully coordinated approach to planning for growth and development that recognizes, respects, and conserves our natural resources, quality of life, safety, and property rights of landowners. I can promise you this is a preferable way to disorderly, haphazard development that erodes what makes Summerfield special to all of us. We have been on our heels and must plan rather than react to growth. A well-written UDO would be a valuable tool to accomplish the goals of Summerfield's comprehensive plan. Summerfield's leadership needs to address head-on how to manage its impending growth, sharpen the UDO and other companion tools, and implementing and enforcing them will be essential to achieving the town's visionary goals. So now Jason is going to go over the comprehensive plan policy areas one by one.
Okay, so as we've noted already, we would like to make sure that people are aware that the committee really used the comprehensive plan as our guiding light. It was a visionary statement. In fact, it's somewhat of a mission statement for the town. And throughout our work as a committee, we constantly reviewed, went back to it in the context of the UDO to make sure the UDO was in alignment and to point out where it was not in alignment. In every one of our recommendations throughout the document that you have before you and in the comments, we were seeking to uphold the intent and to honor the intent that's in the comprehensive plan. And I also wanted to note that no one recommendation should be undermining any other. In an example, housing recommendations that we make must still uphold preserving the rural character of Summerfield, making sure we obtain and protect open space, mitigating transportation impacts, mitigating water impacts, and all of those things. This is not intended as an eye test. I put this up here because I think that many people may not have had the opportunity to download the comprehensive plan and to really review it extensively. I know that in the time that we've lived here, I continually come back and find little nuggets of wisdom inside here that are really very important to our future. So policy 1 and policy 2, just as examples. If you can see any of this, each policy has very specific items that cover all different facets of something like the sidewalk, bikeway, and trail systems, or transportation, the 12 policy areas for the comprehensive plan. So if people have any questions about the decisions or the recommendations that we've made along the way, please do go back to the comp plan and understand that we use that as our foundation during the review. Policy 1 was appropriate limited commercial development. This may also be an eye test, if it is. Specifically the items that we find in there, the town of Summerfield preferring commercial development that retains the feel and charm of a small rural community, scaled appropriately, considering adjacent uses, and seeking to try to connect those uses. The deficiencies we found in the UDO in this policy area had a lot to do with signage and lighting, making sure that those retain rural feel, trying to achieve village-like clusters rather than strip developments, which is something you see often in the comp plan, and specifically asking for examples, graphic examples to be placed in the UDO to guide developers who have that sort of intent. Site landscaping and roadside buffers, you'll see this repeated throughout our recommendations in the report because it comes up in many different areas. But seeking not only to ensure screening and that sort of thing, but also if there are rural elements that already exist in the landscape, to ideally support and protect those rather than prescribe buffers along the way. And also in the limited commercial development, and you'll see this again later, to encourage new mixed use and affordable housing options within some of those districts when appropriate. And I should note too for the audience that there is extensive commentary in the actual document. If you have time and you want to read through and see what the dialogue was, and I think there's extensive video as well to go back and look through. Policy Area 2, sidewalk, bikeway, trail systems. This is something that relates to walkability and bikeability in the community, overall connections between neighborhoods, connections between commercial and residential. It does tie into transportation, which is a different policy area, but it's also covering things like wildlife habitat for humanity, for humans to get out and clear their minds, safe routes to schools, and a variety of alternatives for people to recreate. Specifically, we asked zoning to incorporate a multimodal transportation plan, and I can offer too that's something that Trails and Open Space Committee is in the process of working through, and so rather than asking you to be designing that, we're asking to have you incorporate and maybe guide us along the way, and Drew is aware of that as well. Including multimodal facilities in the design of all future streets where appropriate, so complete streets may not be applicable to all areas of town, but certainly there are areas where it would really benefit the community, and ease some of those elements that I just talked about with sidewalks, safe routes to schools, things like that. We asked to require bicycle traffic in the traffic impact analysis when new developments go in, both commercial and large residential. And to require sidewalks in new developments near schools, and that's not just Gilbert County schools, but if there are charter schools, private schools, that it be considered. And we will get to schools later in a different policy area. Policy Area 3 was community character preservation. That is something that applies more to the appearance from outside of a development. It has a lot to do with rural character, and it is we know that we want to preserve rural character, but what exactly does that mean? So we are asking for better references to categorize what our valued resources are. So for example, I think we have in here that farm-specific items should also be added to the classifications, that we try to distinguish between open space and conservation resources. To define those, require identification as part of initial site specific planning. And to include those elements in those buffers and view sheds for all developments, as I just mentioned in policy 1, for commercial but also in residential. You'll find other things like prohibiting billboards and encouraging opportunities for farm-related uses like existing ag tourism, potentially ensuring that there can be some residential incorporated into farm uses. Let's see. So policy area 4, then transportation improvements. Again, this relates back to policy area 2 because all of these policies do interconnect and support each other throughout the comp plan. This had to do with the deficiencies we found in the UGO specifically were related to effective screening of uses from the roadways, but also to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian access around vehicular traffic, so not just in our thoroughfares, but also in new developments. And you'll see that in other areas as well, where we're asking for like a village-like clusters, for example, to ensure that if there's bicycle traffic or even pedestrian traffic from adjacent residential areas, that there is a way to navigate those cluster developments to get through to the commercial or back to the residential. We did have, let's see, overall trying to mitigate the impacts of traffic generating uses, and that relates to connections between different uses and essentially keeping people out of their cars or offering them the opportunity to stay out of their cars. We're certainly not telling anyone that they can't drive their car from one use to another. But often I think when we provide the opportunity to get from one place to another with ease, that people will choose the path of least resistance. We ask that we balance the effects of transportation requirements on rural character and to define major traffic generators ahead of time in new developments, traffic impact analyses, to be consistent with different areas of the comprehensive plan. Policy area 5, water supply, of course, is of huge importance for the future to have plentiful, safe, potable water. And we, as noted before, Andrew mentioned that we were not able to see the impending report, but we want to emphasize that we, in the UDO, rely on the importance of design and hydrological science to guide zoning decisions. One thing that seemed to be lacking from the UDO was a reliance or encouragement of native plant requirements for landscaping. Andrew already mentioned encouraging innovation in the technology and design of water supply, sewage treatment, and stormwater management in particular. I saw at the Founders Day Festival there was Stormwater Smart was there, sort of educating folks on what's possible